What's going on, everybody? I hope everyone is having a fantastic start to their morning. I'm here with an outstanding guest. He's doing a great job with 24/7 Sports Inside the U, Christopher Stock. Christopher, thank you so much for coming on the show. I greatly appreciate it.
It's great. Great to be here, Paul. Thanks for having me on.
Absolutely. And, to start off the show, Howard Schnellenberger, he did pass away today. This was someone who pioneered the Miami Hurricanes football program. So may he rest in peace. Send my condolences to his family. Christopher, what kind of impact did Howard Schnellenberger really leave on the University of Miami?
I think anybody that either talks about Miami or is familiar with the program gives a ton of credit to Howard for, getting this whole thing started. A lot of people that have followed the history of the football program feels like it really got started in the early 80s because of the things he was doing to change the direction of the program. And I think he gets a lot of credit internal, again, everybody in Miami, I think he gets a lot more credit at Miami than even outside. I think sometimes he gets overlooked. He's not that maybe as big of a name as a Jimmy Johnson, for example, but ask anybody around the program, they really credit him for getting this thing started. And honestly, one thing that stands out to me is a lot of the recruiting philosophies and principles that he had back in the early 80s, when he got going, still applies today in terms of recruiting locally, the state of Miami mantra. So I think he gets a lot of credit and the mentality that helped change the program.
Absolutely. Howard Schnellenberger, a great legacy left on the University of Miami. Send his condolences to his family. Definitely it's a sad day today that he passed away, but we remember the good times of Howard Schnellenberger and what the mark he left at the University of Miami and Louisville as well. Christopher, there is a scrimmage going on this Saturday, today. This is very exciting. This is basically the first time the whole team gets together after the Oklahoma State game to play some football. What are going to be some things you're going to be looking into, want to hear Manny Diaz states?
So there's there's three things I'll say that I'm really looking forward to, and I think the first one starts with the quarterbacks, right? You're talking about Tyler Van Dyke, and will we hear any positive play from Peyton Matoka? Jake Garcia has been limited, but I think with Tyler Van Dyke, there's a lot of excitement around the program. They're speaking very highly of him this spring. And it's been a little bit different than what we heard about him in the fall. It's not that they weren't high on him before, but they've been really, the players and coaches have been really saying a lot of positive things about Tyler. So you want to see Tyler have a good day. You'd like to see everything, completion percent, the yards downfield, those kind of things. Like to see some touchdowns. Again, we're going to get stats from UM, and it's provided by them as a closed scrimmage. So you got to take some things with a grain of salt, but you just have to take the information for what it is. So I think Tyler's a big one. I think my number two thing and three is kind of goes together. I asked Coach Diaz about this week about how is the running game progressing, and he said, they're not really evaluating it right yet because they haven't been in full pads and full hitting. They've been in pads, but he just felt like the scrimmage was going to be a really telling thing in terms of how well they run the ball and then how well they defend it. So I'll be looking at the running game stats. Again, you want to see, the guys, Cameron Harris, Don Chaney Jr., Jalen Knight, and all three of those guys. You want to see if there's any separation. I think these are the kind of things that we see either in the spring or fall with scrimmages. You start to see some separation with guys in these scrimmages. So again, the running game, how they're doing, and then how they're defending it, because they certainly got to defend the run better than they did last year.
Yeah, no doubt about that. Those are two great points. It's kind of like devil's advocate, because if we run the ball really well, it's like, well, are we, defending the run? Or did we improve in that aspect? Or, we stopped our run game? Because at times, this past season, our run game as an offense, it was obsolete. It wasn't really involved in the playbook. I remember against Clemson, we only had 7 rushing yards, for example. That was overall with 3 different running backs. So we definitely have to find a groove running the ball, and we have to, find a way to defend rushing the football against opposing opponents. UNC, think everyone goes back to that game, with that comparison. So it'll be very interesting. Christopher, regarding the quarterback position, it seems like Tyler Van Dyke has really taken over first team snaps. He's been impressing everyone around the program. I've only heard great things. Is that what you think is going on in the quarterback room? And I'm curious, what have you heard regarding Jake Garcia and Peyton Matoka?
Yeah, starting with Tyler, I think the big things that we're hearing, in the offseason that you should be excited about is the intangibles. Manny Diaz came out the very first day in terms of the offseason workouts when he talked about that. And he said, look, Tyler's a beast. He's done really well. He's actually been impressing in mat drills. They do these competitive drill, these competition within the team, like small team groups, whether it's going to class or meetings or all these sort of things around a program, not just how they do on the practice field. And Tyler was a guy that was impressing. And they just, again, calling him a beast and saying he's doing all these great things. These are just like some really positive things you like to hear from the tangible standpoint. Also hearing he's doing well with the leadership. These are all certainly big qualities to have for a quarterback. And so those are the things that you should be excited about. And now we're starting to get into the scrimmages with his play. Let's see how he performs and things like that. So those are the things with Tyler. And yeah, I think he's got the upper hand on the other two. He was ahead of Peyton Matoka on the depth chart last year. That seems to be how things are going right now. Although they do want to split time, this spring with the snaps. It's typical with spring ball. Peyton Matoka, the big thing with him is, he's a dual threat guy. He can use his legs to get out and run a little bit better than Tyler, for example. And so, and I know Peyton's hungry to show what he's got too. He's still here for a reason, and he still feels like he can compete. So we'll definitely keep our eyes on Peyton. And then with Jake Garcia, I've certainly been very high on him from what I saw from high school film, got to know, hearing his story and things like that, and different positive things from the high school standpoint. And so he comes to Miami dealing with that foot injury that he dealt with in high school. So he's a little bit limited right now. So we'll see when Jake is able to go completely, how he'll do. But definitely people should be excited about Jake and all three guys. A lot of eyes on them because with D'Eriq King out, they're getting a ton of reps right now.
Yeah, this is a great opportunity. D'Eriq King is rehabbing, soaring through benchmarks according to Coach Manny Diaz. Great opportunity for the three underclassmen to get some snaps and see, how they're playing at an elite Power 5 program. Like you stated, Christopher, it is a great opportunity. Speaking of quarterbacks, we just picked up the number 5 dual threat quarterback in the nation, Jacurrie Brown, out of Lowndes High School in Georgia. Christopher, what comes to your mind when you think of Jacurrie Brown as a quarterback? Personally, for me, I think he's very physically advanced. I think he can really excel specifically in an inside zone read option offense. What do you think?
What stands out to me about him is upside. I think he's a guy, you've seen it from the legs. He ran for over 1,000 yards last year. The passing numbers need to improve. But I think what we've seen with him already in the past year, for example, he's shown a lot of improvement with his passing ability. I expect him to improve drastically in the next 6 to 9 months with his development. And I think that's the thing that people should watch for. Maybe not necessarily look at, the completion percent under 50 right now last season, but maybe see how he does in his senior year, see how he performs. He's a highly regarded guy, 4-star prospect by 24/7 Sports composite rankings, number 5 dual threat quarterback. So there's a lot to like about him. You mentioned the physical attributes, the size speed combination is there. And the thing, again, with the quarterback situation that we just talked about with Tyler Van Dyke, but you like what you're hearing about with his intangibles. Seems like a guy that's a leader, strong leader. Guys play for him, rally around him, and those are great signs. Those are things you absolutely need to have at quarterback more than any other position, and it seems like he's got those traits, and we'll see how he develops with his progression and his development over the next 9 months or so.
Absolutely. Jacurrie Brown, number 5 dual threat quarterback. Welcome to the University of Miami. Christopher, I've always stated, you can have a great college football quarterback. You can have Tom Brady, John Elway, whoever you want at the quarterback position. But if your wide receivers don't catch the football, you're not going to be successful offensively. What do you think about our wide receiver rotation? I thought it was very interesting. Coach Rhett Lashley said there were no named starters yet on the offense besides D'Eriq King. I thought maybe, hey, is that a shot at Mike Harley and his performance this spring? What's going on at the wide receiver rotation? Who do you think has been stepping up? If Charleston Rambo has made a big impact, I'm curious about your thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think there's any question Mike Harley would be the top wide receiver on the team, whatever Rhett Lashley is saying or any other coach. Mike is a leader. He's working hard. He's doing well. I think he can have even a better season than he had last year, right at 800 yards. So I think Mike's a guy that's still at the top of the chart. Just when he speaks to us in the media, he just has this confidence about him, and he seems very focused. So I'm not worried about Mike. I think what you're looking at right now at wide receiver is, will Mark Pope and D. Wiggins take a step after what happened last year? Will they get better? Or are they actually really going to implement these young receivers? Like you mentioned, a lot of people are excited. Like, what do these young guys have in store? These second-year guys, Michael Redding III, Daz Warsham, Xavier Restrepo, and Keyshawn Smith. Everyone should be excited about Keyshawn Smith. Gets that number change, showing a lot of speed downfield. I know they really like him. I've talked to his trainer, and he's really excited about the opportunity he has. I think Keyshawn Smith is the one to watch of those four. But certainly, let's see if Jeremiah Payton gets it going. He's still recovering from the injury. And then, we'll see. We'll see how things go. And then Charleston Rambo, as you mentioned, everything that's coming out about him is just that speed, which is great. You can't have enough speed on the outside. Also, he's a guy that was at a big-time program at OU, played a lot, has a lot of receptions and yards, so that experience is there. And I think Charleston can certainly vault himself all the way up to the number 2 spot if he continues to play well and if Mark and D don't develop or progress as they need to. So Charleston's certainly doing well. And again, I know everybody's excited about the other 3 receivers that Miami signed that will be here in the summer too.
We need, in my opinion, I understand a lot of people are upset at the wide receiver rotation, some players this past year, but anyone who can help out and contribute on this football field this upcoming season, we need them, because after Mike Harley, it's kind of unknown. Like you stated, he's probably our hardest worker. We have Charleston Rambo coming in from a high-powered, big-time program in Oklahoma. That's a high-powered offense, okay? There's big expectations there to make plays offensively. He needs to step up. D. Wiggins, Mark Pope, we can't count them out. I understand a lot of people had enough of them, but we need them to do well. You need as many players in that wide receiver rotation to contribute to this offense this upcoming season. Guys like Keyshawn Smith, Jeremiah Payton, Michael Redding, we have 12 guys on scholarship at the wide receiver rotation. We need everyone to contribute. So, hey, I'm very curious how it pans out moving forward, but I'm sure Rob Likens, Rhett Lashley, they'll find the right 3 guys to really become playmakers in this wide receiver rotation moving forward. Offensive line, Christopher, I think we've seen kind of a first-team offensive line kind of develop. I know there's a couple battles going on at specific positions. Let's touch up on that unit. Zion Nelson, how has he been performing so far? Because I think he made a huge jump from his freshman to sophomore year. And I really think the sky's the limit for him. He really is developing nicely. And you can see he's really getting more comfortable in his body. And he's, growing into that projected player that Miami went after. That was a 2-star recruit that committed to App State.
Yeah, there's still a lot of positive things we're hearing about Zion Nelson there at left tackle. You touched on it. He improved last year, which is exactly what you want from a young player. You don't want guys to be stagnant in their development, and we saw him improve. And then, towards the end of the year, Coach Lashley's mentioning, this is either our most consistent guy or the best lineman that they have at the time. So Zion certainly took that step up. And now what you're looking for him, a guy that started for 2 years now you want him to be in that caliber, that ACC, all ACC caliber type performer. You want him just to be really steady and very good. You want to really see it. You don't want to see it in spots or in certain games. You want to see that consistency each and every game that he's dominating whoever's he's going against on the defensive line. So hearing positive things about him from this spring, again, you just want him to take that jump for next season. Yeah,
no doubt about it. Offensive line. Who have you seen as getting first team reps per se? Corey Gaynor at center. I know, was it Jalen Rivers? And I'm like blanking right now. Who Jalen Rivers and who was the other individual?
We got Ja'Kai Clark at left guard.
Clark. I'm blanking. It's too early for me.
Oh, it's all good. Yeah, it's all good. So offensive line, you got Zion on the left tackle. At the left guard spot, you've got Ja'Kai Clark there, started last year, but you've got Jalen Rivers. And look, they said it last year, the coaches. They said, look, Jalen Rivers is going to be ready to compete next spring. They really felt like he could really help them in the competition. And I what stands out to me is I asked Jared Harrison Hunt about Jalen Rivers, what's it like going against him in practice? And he said, look, he just kind of like, that's a big boy. He can hit at the offensive line. So point of attack is very good for Rivers. So I think he's doing very well, which is a good sign. Again, a guy that you're high on coming out as a recruit. So that's the competition at left guard. Center is going to be Corey Gaynor. And then at right guard, I think what's interesting is DJ Scaife started there last year, but DJ's actually moved to right tackle,
Yeah.
and he's competing with Jared Williams. I don't expect him to win that battle, but so that's where he's at. So he seems like he's the odd one out, and he struggled last year at guard. So we'll see. He likes tackle better, so we'll see how he develops there. And you can never have enough offensive line depth. So if he slides into that backup spot at tackle, but Navon Donaldson's the one to watch for. He's improving his weight conditioning, all those positive things. Mike Harley said he's running, which you've not seen him. He's always been a guy that kind of jogs with drills and everything, but he's running, moving better, and I think that's great. And he's at that right guard spot right now. Is the way it shakes out.
Yeah. I was very satisfied when I heard they were moving Navon Donaldson to right guard. Remember, he was a freshman All-American, I believe, when he was a right guard his freshman year. And we saw he made a lot of big plays down the field. So ultimately, if he's in better condition, he's running, getting in better shape. Seems like physically as well, he's putting up better numbers. Hey, this could be the Navon Donaldson we always wanted to have at the University of Miami. Better late than never. So Navon Donaldson, I wish him the best of luck in his final go-around at the Miami Hurricanes football program, but I think there's some big expectations for Navon Donaldson this upcoming season. Christopher, tight ends. This is a very interesting position unit for this spring. Will Mallory's out. Elijah Arroyo, he has a minor injury. I'm not sure if he's been practicing present day, but we're very limited, and it's a lot of underclassmen playing as well, getting an opportunity. What have you seen from the tight end position so far?
Yeah, I think this is a spring for Larry Hodges to really emerge. They've spoken positive about him and his development the last 2 years, but he's not been on the field during games. But this spring is important for Larry to really emerge and to be that true number 2 tight end that they want to have with that 1-2 combination, with Will Mallory being the starter, and Will's been out this spring. So that's why this is such an important spring for Larry Hodges. Dominic Mammarelli is also a guy known more for his blocking, a young guy that can also fit into that mix. Elijah Arroyo, you mentioned, yes, he's dealing with the injury, one of those injuries that he dealt with in high school at the end of his high school career. So nothing really to worry about, but certainly I think this is with Larry, and I'm very curious to hear how he does in the scrimmage that's going on and hear how he does the rest of spring. But they certainly like him, and we'll see, right? He's got to perform and do well, but they like what they've seen so far on the practice field.
Christopher, does this offense take a step forward this upcoming season? 34 points per game this past year. You have your entire offensive line unit coming back. De'Ara King is coming back. I think we take a big step forward. What do you think?
Yeah, I think with De'Ara King, I think he's got, I've said this before, and I like what he did last year. I just think really highly of him. I think he can have even bigger performances week in and week out. There's a couple things that I would be a little bit hesitant about. I thought this offense was a lot better when Brevin Jordan was on the field, the things he could do, and they don't have that. Even though they like what Will does and brings to the table at tight end, he doesn't do the same things that Brevin does. However, I think if you're looking for a big increase, I think it starts with the running game. I know last year, if we remember at the beginning of the year, they were really trying to pound the running game. Rhett Lashley calls his offense a power spread offense. They want to try to get one guy really lead the pack. I think those running backs all have ability. They could pick any one of them, and I think they do well. I just think more yards on the ground could be better. They're middle of the pack last year in the ACC. So I think if we're talking about a step up, I think you're looking for De'Ara King to have more consistent big games. And then I think the running game can really get going. And you're hoping that's the case because you like their ability. And then you like that experience on the offensive line. So something's got to break in a positive direction. And I think the receivers, they'll find – I think they want 6 guys in the rotation. I think they'll be fine with who they put out there. I don't think it's going to be a dominant group. But I think it'll be a group that can make plays with their speed and ability. I just think where you can see bigger gains is with that running game.
Very interesting. You're expecting a big year from us running the football offensively. Hey, I'll hold you to it. I'm hoping to as well. We have literally 3 horses in the running back room and Cody Brown as well coming into the program. So there really should be no excuses. We should be very effective running the football. Christopher, let's slide over to the defensive side of the football. I want to ask you quickly, is Bob Shoop going to be incorporated with the defense as much as people think? Because he's just under the title as analyst, but a lot of people think he's our defensive coordinator in disguise.
Yeah, I think he's a guy that brings a lot to the table. Let's just start with that. I think the coaches and the players have already pointed him out as a guy that brings that experience, which is great to hear. I think someone in that role, that veteran leadership, a veteran coach that's been there, that's been through some things, if he's able to help, and you don't always hear this, that position, that role is a little behind the scenes type stuff. But with Coach Shoop, you are hearing that he is active. I think one of the things that they've done under Coach Diaz on both sides of the ball, they've really done a good job of getting the coaches having all the assistant coaches having input into what's going on. I remember asking different coaches this last year with the staffs they had on both sides of the ball, where they have these meetings and they're really trying to implement as many good ideas as possible. I know Rhett Lashley does that, offensive coordinator. Coach Likens has really complimented them about doing that, where they feel the other assistants feel like their voices are being heard. I think Coach Shoop to the mix just adds to that. I think, his ideas and some of the things they want to do defensively can help. But I do think it's still, this is still going to be Manny Diaz's defense. It's still going to be the same principles. And Manny, I still expect to call the plays as he's already announced.
Hey, I hope, obviously, it's a lot better defense compared to this past season. I think it'll be a 180 with Manny Diaz, Coach Shoop overseeing the defense. Two great defensive minds coming together. So I'm very curious how it's going to pan out throughout the regular season. I don't think you see this throughout the spring game. I think you'll see the fruits of their labor, in real time, during the regular season when they're playing against Alabama, for example. That's when you see the differences of the 2020 season to 2021. Did we get better or worse? And Christopher, Miami under Coach Diaz has always had a great defensive line. What do you think about this defensive line unit? Because it's very unique. The past, few seasons, we've always been very, very grateful to have very good NFL defensive linemen. We had Gerald Willis at defensive tackle, had a terror of a season, his final year at Miami. You also had Joe Jackson. You had Jonathan Garvin, Kendrick Norton, RJ McIntosh. We just had Jalen Phillips and Gregory Rousseau with Quincy Roche. Are we going to pick up where we left off with the personnel we have right now?
Yeah, I think if we start at defensive end, you mentioned the three that are gone. They don't have guys like that. Okay, let's just be honest. They don't have defensive ends like that. We will see if a guy like Jafari Harvey, so the top guys, Jafari Harvey, DeAndre Johnson, the transfer from Tennessee, and really Zach McLeod making that transition kind of at defensive ends. And then we'll see if Cameron Williams, Chance Williams is kind of in that mix as well. But I think the thing is, can they be like a Joe Jackson, like you mentioned, or, those kind of a Jonathan Garvin type, even Chad Thomas type, they're not going, I would be very surprised if any one of them has the production and ability that those other three guys you just mentioned, with Roche, Phillips, and Rousseau. But they've got to find ways to produce, and you can still be productive players. Like a Trent Harris, if you remember him, he had a really productive senior year at Miami, but he certainly didn't have the ability of these other three guys. So we'll see if they can develop and really progress. But I think a defensive tackle, I think that's a very interesting position, because I think there's still more that Nesta Jade Silvera can bring. He's out this spring, but he's really doing a good job of learning, watching film, really taken to learning, and Coach has mentioned that. So that's a good sign that maybe he can take his learning to the field even more. So maybe he can make a step. And then also, everybody was excited about Jared Harrison Hunt, the flashes he showed last year. He strikes me as a guy that's really even matured even more from where he's at now as he goes into his third season. He could have one of those productive seasons. And then let's not forget, Leonard Taylor isn't here yet, but he's a guy I expect to be in that rotation. I expect him to be good, and I think he'll do well at defensive tackle. So I think it's a step back at defensive end, but we'll see how the tackles do this year.
No, I wholeheartedly agree. Defensive end, you're not going to have those NFL star players like Quincy Roche, Jalen Phillips, and Rousseau that we had, this past season. But, you're bringing in DeAndre Johnson. I think physical measurement-wise, Jafari Harvey is there. He's at 4% body type. You can't teach that, So I think you're bringing in a solid personnel, just not, an elite one. But defensive tackle, Leonard Taylor, the true freshman, 5-star recruit. Will he be a game one impact player? We'll find out. And like you said, man, Nesta, there's still a lot more there. There's a lot of potential, and hopefully we can see him put it together his final year of college football. We got 5 minutes left with Christopher Stock from Inside the U. If you haven't been to his YouTube channel, you are late to the party. He does an outstanding job covering Miami Hurricanes football on YouTube and for 24/7 Sports. Go to his Twitter page, Inside the U. his YouTube channel, Inside the U, and subscribe. Outstanding job. Thank you for your time, Christopher. With 5 minutes left, how has the secondary as a whole really responded to Coach Travaris Robinson, coming to the program, new coach overseeing the entire defensive backs room? How has that relationship been, you think, this spring?
It sounds like it's been good. And I think the biggest thing is it's a different voice, not necessarily, anything bad about before, but it's just a different voice, a guy that's been, a different guy that's been around college football. He gets a lot of respect for his work in the SEC. And also he's been known as a good recruiter and all that kind of stuff. And he's been a guy that, if you followed recruiting and whatnot down in South Florida, you've heard about him for quite a long time. So I think he's doing well. I think the biggest thing to do with the secondary, I think Bubba Bolden can be better. I think Bubba Bolden can be better than he's been. And then also I think Tyreek Stevenson into the mix, bringing a lot of expertise and ability to the room. And then we will see if guys like Jacurrie Couch, DJ Ivy, and then Al Blades when he's back, if they take jumps in their game as well. But you like what you see in the room, and then we'll see at that other safety spot, what will they do with Amari Carter? Gervin Hall, can he kind of get back to some form that he showed 2 years ago? And then again, another freshman, James Williams, got to be excited when he gets on campus.
How do you think James Williams is going to be incorporated in the defense? A lot of people say he's going to be a day one starter. Do you see he can make that big of an impact, and where?
I think he's good enough to be a day one starter. I think he's a day one impact guy wherever they want to put him. I think it's just going to be a matter of when they feel comfortable putting him out there, because all coaches want their players to know the playbook, understand them, be able to trust them. They really look at all of those kind of factors, not just how tall is he, how fast is he kind of thing, and throw him out there like I know fans want to do. I expect James to adjust just fine. I think wherever they want to put him, like I said, and another guy to mention, obviously, in the safety room is Avante Williams, who they say is playing 100 miles an hour, doing well there. So maybe he gets into that mix. But I think, with James, I think it's just a matter of how quickly he can earn the trust of the coaches based on how well he knows the playbook, knows what he's doing. He has to get to UM, ask questions, do all the right things in that standpoint, not necessarily be a freshman where you kind of step back a little bit. If he wants to earn his playing time, he's got to do those things. And any young player, doesn't matter where you play, particularly on defense, you've got to do well on special teams. That's an opportunity for guys. If you're not in that base defense as much as you think you should be, special teams is an option. I think James should, definitely make that a point of emphasis. And if he does well there, then that can certainly help vault him into a role on the base defense quicker than expected, maybe.
Hey, a backfield with James Williams and Avante Williams, and then you got Tyreek Stevenson at corner with Jacurrie Couch on the other side. That's pretty impressive. I think that's very elite, at the Power 5 level. So, hey, that definitely does get me excited for the future. Christopher, linebacker position unit. What do you think? Who will be our two starters at the inside linebacker position?
Well, I think it's a question mark. I think people look at certain guys and well, maybe they'll step up. I think Corey Flagg certainly seems to be a guy the staff really wants to get in there. Bradley Jennings Jr. started all the games last year at that spot, but it just seems like Corey Flagg, they're really opening it up for him, and we'll see if he can get in there and do well. I'm questioning, I know he's trimmed some weight. He's down to about 230, 232. He played over 240 last year at times, but I think the physical attributes with Corey, I think he's got to show his speed. He feels like he does need to improve in that area, so we'll see if he can go sideline to sideline, which is very important when you only have two true linebackers out there with that striker position. So I think he's a guy to watch for in the spring, and then we'll see what they do at that other spot. There's certainly some guys that they can mix in, whether it's a Wayman Steed, Sam Brooks, Avery Huff. I know is a guy a lot of people have been waiting on, but we'll see how that spot transpires, and maybe they still bring in a transfer and Manny said he's open to it, but they want to see how the spring goes. So don't expect anything to happen until after the spring, after they evaluate exactly what they feel like they have at linebacker.
Christopher, thank you very much for your time, man. We greatly appreciate it. You do outstanding work for the University of Miami. And where can the good people watching this show right now find you?
Yeah, you mentioned, I definitely appreciate you always giving that shout out. And Paul, I always appreciate when you jump on the channel. So when you have me on, I always like talking football with you. Yeah, just Inside the YouTube channel is great, but InsideTheU.com, plenty of information, VIP and free content on the site every day. We'll have plenty of information about today's scrimmage there. So if you want to check that out, and if you want to follow me on Twitter at InsideTheU, definitely thank everybody for all the support at all different venues over the years.
Christopher, thank you for your time, and always all about the U, guys. Go Canes.
All right, Paul.
Peace.